what is the best way to tax individuals? What is the best way to set the income tax rate, as it were? And he was in particular examining the income tax schedule, starting with very low rates, ending with top rates, 95%, etc. Many points of graduation, and so forth. And he obtained some answers to it. And the answers were very simple and very direct. He found that there is no basis for having that many points of graduation. You don't need to have 15 points of graduation. It doesn't really necessarily give you a better economic arrangement. Number one. Number two, the top marginal tax rate, he saw no reason to set the top marginal tax rate anywhere beyond, let's say, 35 to 40%. Because he was able to demonstrate through mathematical reasoning. Those of you interested can have a look at this paper. Now, this paper is referred to in the book by the second reference that I gave you, Atkinson-Stiglitz, second book. That book has a reference to this. I can read the paper that Merlis wrote was an exploration. In the theory of optimal income taxation. This was published in a major journal called the Review of Studies in the year 1930. I might also mention, of course, Merlis is a major figure in taxation, and in particular direct taxation. There were a few other very major economists who, at the same time, it's never the case in, let's say, major scientific endeavors that a single person does everything. That's usually not the case. So it can be, so it's usually not the case. Not the case in be it physics or chemistry or genetics or even in economics. And in addition to Merlis, who was writing in 71, there were a few other major economists. Let me give you a few names. One is Atkinson, that I mentioned. Another, I would say, is, well, Stiglitz also, Joseph Stiglitz, who is a well-known name, I think. Many of you might have come across the name of Stiglitz. He's a Nobel laureate. He's an American economist, writes quite extensively on globalization and so forth. Some of you might have seen some of his popular books. Stiglitz, Globalization and its Discontent. That is a book by Stiglitz. But a few others, and I want to take an Indian name here, and the name is, well, he has been knighted, so he is now Sir Partha. He's a professor in Cambridge University right now, the same place where he is a professor. And there are a few other names. There are one or two Indians and a few other major figures. So Merlis, Atkinson, Stiglitz, Dasgupta, these were the people who were contributing this area. And what were the saying? Well, what they were saying is that it is incorrect and self-defeating. It is incorrect and self-defeating to have too high margin tax. Self-defeating. Don't do it. Because it kills the incentive, number one. And number two, it leads people to evade taxes. evade tax. Now, in the Indian context, tax evasion used to be rampant. It continues to be pretty high. But it used to be much more rampant earlier on. And in the context of the UK and many of the European countries, there was not evasion, but something called avoidance of taxation, making use of the chartered accountants and using the tricks, all the tricks that are possible, financial techniques, tax avoidance. And there was something else. At least in a country like UK, there was a lot of migration away from UK. In the 50s, 60s and early 70s, this was happening. Murray was writing at a time when confronted with very high tax rates in UK, 95%. Some of the best professionals, scientists, physicists, doctors, some engineers, they were migrating away to some other country, US in particular, Canada, Australia, where the tax rates were much lower. But by that process, UK was losing out. And so the idea was that Murray was asking the question, what is the right way to tax? And making use of a very elaborate mathematical structure. Those of you interested, you'll have to look at this particular paper. It's a complex paper. And the message of that paper is that choose few rates of graduation and don't set the tax too high, not more than 35%. And this idea was, in fact, this came in 1971. And among the countries that took to it were the English people themselves. There was a taxation inquiry committee in England that made its recommendation in 1978. It is called the Mead Committee. James Mead, another very famous economist, also a Nobel laureate. Now, in 1978, the Mead Committee in UK adopted the Murray's recommendation that the top rate must not be anything more than 35 to 40%. And they adopted it. And later on, US adopted it, Sweden adopted it, and all in the early 80s. And then India, in 1991, set up the Raja Chalaya taxation inquiry committee. And by 92, we had adopted it also in some form. Where in 1992, you'll remember, our tax structure became 10, 20, 30%. Totally distinct from the earlier tax that we had. And today, almost 18, 19 years down the line, slowly we see that direct taxes are now increasing as a fraction of total taxes. It is now certainly yielding results. And the whole idea is not using the policing aspect of taxation, trying to use detection, etc., to garner more revenues. Rather, leaving the idea of revenue gathering to individuals themselves, so that if you set the top marginal tax rate at a lower rate, 30%, individuals will voluntarily come forward. You see, in a very large country, no country has the physical resources to actually do the monitoring and the policing. A country is best run and well run when there is the least policing. But in order to do that, in order to achieve that, you must create the right kind of condition. The correct environment has to be there. If you think that individuals are going to misreveal their taxes and you must have very large detection squad, that is not the best way to run a country over long periods.